And there's a couple things I wanted to show you guys here. So with circles, I wanted to make a circle panel with a circular opening. And this is, I think, a kind of tricky way to keep the parameters of the circle, but also being able to attach it to a rectangle. So let me make a rectangle. Since all the panels I make are 10 by 10, make that one 10 by 10. And we'll make this one have a radius of 4 feet. And a tool I think I might have shown you guys, or I might not have, is Align. Just select it here. I think by default Max is on this one, so just drop this down. You can align it to that. And in this case, I just want all the defaults. I want it to be in this. I want them both to have the same center point. So what I'll do is put an Edit Spline modifier and attach the rectangle. So now I have a thing that's behaving like an editable spline that I could put an extrude on and have it closed off. But I can still go down to my circle and change the radius. But here is where we're going to have to be wary about the limits, because we don't want it to go past. So I don't have history for the rectangle, but I chose which one I wanted. I have history for the circle. There's ways you could make history for the rectangle. I could make a separate rectangle and skin it to this, and then stack them together if I wanted to, but in this particular case, I don't want that. So let's make a point again. Let's go to Parameter Editor and add range again. And go with 0 to 500. It's just a factor. Default it to 100. And add. Oh, I didn't put the attribute holder. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. Depends on how lazy I'm being. Let's undo and actually do an attribute holder. Should be teaching you guys the right way to do things. So let's make this again. Range 0 to 500. On the object's current modifier, add. So there it is. And on this one, I don't need to make a character. I can just leave it as is. One of the things about the character is once you create it as a character, you can't put an edit poly modifier. It becomes difficult to do global deformations. If we avoid it as a character, we can start to do some of that stuff. You'll see some of the effects, it starts to freak out, but you just deal with it, I guess. So put an attribute holder, and that's Alt-1 again. Call it distance. 0 to 1. Yeah, we'll leave it as 0 to 1 for now. So there it is. And same procedure we did last time. We'll go in and go to the track view, right click on that and assign controller. We'll do a float expression. Let's make the same variables. Range, it's going to be scalar. And then we'll have point position, which is a vector. And circle position, which is also a vector. And we're going to assign them. Range. So you can see point is assigned to point, circle is assigned to circle, and range is assigned to that custom attribute. Let's write that formula again, which is length. We'll do circle position minus, it's case sensitive, And it doesn't need the spaces, I'm just putting them in for clarity. We'll evaluate. So this was behaving a little weird for me earlier. So you can see our distance is changing as I move this thing. But now it's at 1, so kind of once it's at 1, it's topped out. So let's assign the radius of the circle to the distance of this point. I think Alt F5, no, Alt 5. Alt 5 brings up the wire parameters. So I want the circle, and under here, under modified objects, circle, I want the radius, and I want to attach it to modified objects, attribute holder, distance. And I want distance to drive the radius, so in that direction. Connect. So there it is affecting it, but the effect is really small. And since I know it defaults to generic units, I'm going to multiply it times 48 generic units. And 1 generic unit is 1 inch. I know my panel's 10 feet. At a 48-inch radius, that's the max it can go, is an 8-foot diameter. So I'll update that. But it's still growing too big. So what we need to do is limit that distance to 1 like we did last time. So if I go over here to, nope, not wire parameters. It's twice I did it. Track view. Let's add that same minimum function. So now once it reaches 48, it stops, because we added 48 in the wire parameters. So very similarly to the last tutorial, we can start to array this thing. Sometimes I'll make my point a little bigger. Let's increase our range. So we're getting that little point to drive the inside radius of those panels. And this one's a little simpler than the other one because it's just one parameter you have to wire. I think they're both really good tutorials. I really recommend doing both. But now that we have this system, and it's from position to position, so if you go higher, it starts to affect it also. So you kind of want to leave it right there on plane. It becomes a little easier to see if you do this. But there's lots of different things you can start to do to this. Let's again, at the risk of breaking things and doing things I hadn't really planned to do, let's try to wire the extrusion amount to the distance also. See if we get 2 things going at once. It's wired. Let's go extrusion amount, distance, drive extrusion, connect. Let's add a multiplier. And there it goes. It's getting thinner. Let's make it bigger. So now when we array this thing, this is what I mean by not being able to change them after. You kind of have to change it, erase them all, and make it again. As soon as I have an answer on that, I'll let you guys know. There might be a script for it, so I'll look for that also. Next week we're going to cover scripts and plugins. So our range is still too small. So you can start to build some pretty complex models pretty quickly. And stuff like this is be really difficult, or not difficult. It would just take a long time to model this kind of effect. And after you're done with one, you're like, well, you guys get the idea. It can change and stuff. But building systems like this, you can really start to test ideas and run through iterations, which is one of the main criteria of the assignment, is to build an iterative design system.